Good morning and welcome to Rising. Briahna Joy Gray is back for the rest of the week. And remember, Fridays are going to be Emily Jashinsky and Ryan Grimm from now on, so stay tuned for that. We're glad to have you back with us, Briahna.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back.
We'll also have Alaimi Alurin and Darvio Moro, who will join us to discuss the new security measures being looked at by New York City Mayor Eric Adams. And Batya Ungar Sargon discusses Elon Musk's fight against the mainstream media. Plus, we have an insider perspective to share on J&J's $99 million settlement for their role in the opioid epidemic in West Virginia.
But first, we want to dive into some of Biden's latest approval ratings with the 18 to 34-year-old age group. Biden's approval with younger Americans has all but collapsed since January 2021, according to new polling. Let's take a look at a few of these surveys conducted recently. Biden's approval with this age group has dropped to just a 29% approval rating, as you can see in blue, and the disapproval rating has gone up from below 40% all the way up to a 55% disapproval rating, represented by the orange line. For younger Americans with no college degree, the disapproval rating peaks at 56%, while 27% approve of Biden's job. Young Hispanic Americans disapprove at 49%, according to the poll, and 32% approve, though we've discussed other Hispanic polling on this show that showed even lower numbers than that. This poll shows that young Black Americans have the highest approval rating for Biden at 45% approval, with only 26% disapproval.
Ugh, not good numbers, though.
No, it's interesting to see that young Black Americans continue to be the most loyal cohort, but that doesn't seem to mean anything in terms of the Biden administration's willingness to offer Black American voters what they say they want to come to the polls. You know what? You love it. It should be some kind of a buzzer drinking game because you know I'm going to talk about student loan debt.
If it was a drinking game, that would be great.
The thing is, the reality is who has the most student debt in this country. It is Black women voters, one of the most consistent voting groups at the polls, disproportionately skewed younger with respect to who holds the debt, although not exclusively. As I've said repeatedly everywhere, I'm given an opportunity to say so, the fastest growing cohort of debtors, student debtors in this country are senior citizens, with something like 60,000 Social Security checks garnished in 2018, the most recent numbers I have, to pay student debt. And all that being the case, and student debt cancellation being one of the few things that Joe Biden can do by executive order without the consent of the Senate, all on his own, put money in people's pockets ahead of Election Day when we're looking at these poll numbers and he's still declining to do it, boggles the mind.
Do you think Biden is just too old to be well-liked by the youths increasingly?
No, because Bernie is beloved. He is perhaps the most, at least he was, I suspect he still is, the most popular politician in America, particularly with the under 30 set.
Right.
There's no excuse. It has to do, look, I know we live in a media climate that wants to reduce everything to these kind of identity characteristics and say, well, you're like this and that's why you favor X, Y, and Z, or this person has these traits and that's why they're disfavored in these kinds of reasons. But the reality is, whatever you felt of the Bernie and the Bernie movement, is that part of why he angered the pundits and prognosticators so much is because he bulked all of the expectations of who was supposed to like what. Here was this old, crotchety, not especially traditionally charismatic man who had the biggest crowds in 2016, the biggest crowds in 2020, the most youthful crowds, a diverse coalition, number 2 with Black voters in 2020, number 1 with Hispanic voters in 2020. And if people want to figure out, if the Biden administration wants to know what they can do to up these numbers, I think that's who they should be taking a lesson from.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Biden does not know. Biden doesn't know right now how to speak to any constituency of the Democratic Party. So I think it just kind of tracks with his growing unpopularity in general. Doesn't have any successes really to talk about. Agenda not approved. People don't really like the Afghanistan withdrawal, even though I liked it perfectly fine, but most people disagree. They're frustrated with the direction of the
media didn't like the Afghanistan withdrawal. Many Americans, many voters actually, it polled quite well.
I think the idea of doing it polled well, but they were not. The media successfully poisoned their minds against how the execution was handled. And Biden kind of staked his entire. He was supposed to be the return to normalcy president. You were done with the craziness of the Trump years. We're going to be done with the craziness of the pandemic because now everything's going to be better. And it's, we're halfway through his presidency, or his first term, possibly his only term. And just now, and I'm going to talk about this more in my radar, obviously, just now, finally, we're going to not have to wear masks on planes. The normalcy that was promised us from the beginning took this long, and it was by court order, not anything Biden administration has done. they fought against normalcy.
Yeah, so I think that in some ways this is the bet that Biden has made, right? Because what he has chosen to do is a lot of COVID theater. Insofar as we had the State of the Union, which was maskless, there has been an attempt to create a veneer that everything is back to normal, because obviously there's an understanding that the more people feel like he's resolved COVID, the more his election chances and the chances of Democrats in the fall are going to be better. However, you cannot, I don't think, posture in a way that makes it seem like COVID is over and it's okay to wear masks, and then be upset and politicize a choice to get rid of masks in the plain context. I think both are pretty attenuated from the reality of what probably common sense and science dictates, but there's no central keeper of the scientific fact at this point, because the CDC has undermined its own credibility, the Biden administration has undermined its own credibility, and it really is left to individuals at this point, quite literally, because the airplane mandates are gone, to figure out what works best for them. And I think we're going to see a lot of purchases of high quality KN95 masks and other gear for those people who are still feeling very much like they're in a risky situation. It's risky business.
I'll have more to say about that in my radar, but for right now, despite Biden sinking approval ratings in just about every demographic in the country, we're learning that Biden is planning another run at the White House in 2024. Obviously, according to new reporting from The Hill, President Biden has told Obama he is planning to run for re-election, and according to the sources, they're holding on to the belief that Biden is the only person who can beat Trump. I've been saying this all along. The idea that anyone other than Biden is going to be the Democratic candidate in 2024 is totally absurd. No one, he would have to be dead to not be running.
Well, look, there's some mixed reporting on that I was reading this morning. There is apparently Joe Biden, he has said he is going to run, but there are people in the progressive camp who have said firmly that they believe there's going to be a progressive challenger. Ro Khanna said recently on my show and other places that he is not going to run in 2024. He might in 2028. We'll see if there's a progressive challenger from somewhat outside of the party, like someone like Marianne Williamson, who there's been some excited reporting about. There was a New York Times Sunday feature a couple of months ago that asked that question. But I think after what has happened last week with the Congressional Progressive Caucus endorsing Shontel Brown, the moderate opponent to Senator Nina Turner in Ohio's 11th district, after the repeated cycle of reporting about Pramila Jayapal apparently undermining progressive efforts in that bloc to vote as a bloc to hold up must-pass legislation in order to get concessions for the left. After all of the disappointments that have come out of the last 2 years for the progressive movement, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a significant push to have some faction of the Democratic Party, these leftists, decouple themselves from this institution that has been so disrespectful to them. And if it is Joe Biden again, I think that people should take a good hard look at some of the approval numbers we just watched, because I think there's a level of dissatisfaction that is new, something that we didn't see in 2016 and didn't see in 2020.
It would not surprise me at all if he draws a progressive challenger, but the idea that he was not going to no one seeks power, no one obtains power and then just gives it up.
No one runs for president 3 times and then says, never mind,
right.
I'm good.
So that was, especially with the, his worst chances are, I don't know, let's say there's a 45% chance only that he's reelected. I don't know that that's true, but if you have a 45% chance of being president for 4 more years, you will take that.
Absent of medical catastrophe.
Right. That would be the only circumstance in which he would not run. And he is more, while you're right that you could find progressive candidates that might excite various aspects of people he would like to bring back in more than Biden does, Biden is he's more popular than Kamala Harris.
Yeah, that's the thing.
He's more popular than, or just as popular as probably a lot of the kind of Biden centrist moderate, I don't
Amy
know that he's actually
Pete Buttigieg.
Those kinds of people are not, there's no way, they don't have more star power than he does. And that's what's missing from this. It's the name recognition, it's the star power, and he's just better known to people, to people who don't follow politics as closely as we do, as closely as the political class does. They know who Biden is. I mean, that's why he got to be the nominee in the first place. They didn't know who any of these other people are. They remembered that Biden was the vice president. He was generally liked And that got him the nomination, despite all the polls, but he has the wrong messaging, and Warren excites people, and what about Mayor Pete? Nobody knows who those people are. They know who Biden is.
And to your point, the article I was reading this morning, I think in the New York Times, that was ranking all of the potential candidates, said exactly that. I think there might be more pressure for Biden to step down to the extent that it would work if there were other alternatives that were polling much better than he was. But that's just not the case.
Yeah, that's especially a problem for the Democrats. The Republicans have 800 people lining up to be either a president or, failing that, a Fox News talking head, or both at the same time. So anyway, we'll tell you what's on our radars coming up next.